Hello and welcome back to another episode of Soccer Supernova, a State of Mind's dedicated football chat show. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the former referee Stuart Dougal. Stuart, thank you so much for joining me in this slightly different chat. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Strange circumstances we're all in, but doing fine and like most people, looking forward to the Euros.
Absolutely. How have you found the last year? You know, it's obviously you're no longer a referee, but it's been a tricky one for us all.
Aye, it certainly has. I think the big thing from a football perspective is no fans in the stadium, and that's brought its own challenges for players. And believe it or not, it's actually helped the referees. So I'm okay for no fans being in the stadium for a wee while, but even the referees would admit you need the fans back, you need that atmosphere, you need the excitement, the adrenaline running. So it has been strange, but fingers crossed. We'll see into the new season some fans back allowed in and starting to shout at the referees and everybody else for that matter.
Absolutely. When you were a referee, actually, what was your relationship like with the fans in general?
I had absolutely no issue with the fans, Monday to Friday, if you like. Football fans generally are interested in the game. I could count in one hand the amount of run-ins that I had with a fan in the street, for example. But my experience through, I do a lot of business, and so I meet a lot of people that were just genuinely interested in hearing what it's like to be a referee. Most sympathise, even although on a Saturday, we'll call it a Saturday, but when football's played every day now. But during a game, most fans would get stuck in about the referee, and away from the game, they fully sympathise with a lot of the pressures the referees feel. So I think I'm a great rapport with the fans, and as I say, the fact that I never had too many run-ins with them testifies that, I think.
Absolutely, sets you in great stead. So before we carry on with your career, let's go right back to the beginning. So where did the love of football begin for you?
My mum would tell me, and we just had this discussion at the weekend, that it was in the room. My mum, had a terrible pregnancy with me just kicking all the time, and her words were, "He's going to be a football player." So thankfully, I never had a whistle in there. I might have been a wee bit of a surprise for her, but no, I've got pictures when I was a wee boy, two, three, four. Just all I did was play football. Loved playing at football, and I was never without a ball. And as I progressed, and I don't know if you've got a question on this one, but as I progressed and realised that I would never be a professional footballer, a combination of things there. I ended up going to refereeing classes, which when I played football, I was a referee's nightmare. So I was always nipping the rear and a few yellow cards for dissent because I knew best. So I get the opportunity to see if I did, and probably didn't know best, but I enjoyed it. The coming up through the ranks, which we might touch on later on.
Absolutely. Just to pick on what you said there, that I know best sort of mentality. When you make those opening stages into refereeing, then do you go in maybe a little bit bullshit, a little bit confident that I've played the game, I know the rules?
Well, that was the biggest mistake, or the biggest learning curve when I went to the classes, because it's basically come back to school to be educated in the laws of the game. And you played football, you know it all. And actually, we're hearing things from the lecturers who are ex-referees telling you things about the game, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, didn't know that either. Didn't know that either." So it's a real eye opener, first of all. So anybody that loves football would actually benefit from learning the laws of the game, and the nuances. It's not just about here are the 17 laws and get on with it. It's just the nuances within the laws. So again, genuine football fans going along even just to get that education is an eye opener in football. So you then come out to referee and thinking, geez, there's a lot about this game that I don't know. And you work your way through the kind of basically the boys' football, amateur football, and on the go.
Do you think if you had that education that you talk about, then you could have maybe made it more as a footballer yourself?
Yeah, no, you need ability, which I thought I had, but when you see that even the kind of lower league type footballers against your hard working amateur, they're a class apart. And then as you go up the grades, and fortunately I was lucky enough to go up the grades refereeing, you see players who are probably rated by fans. They have got much more ability than the good amateur and, dare I say, the good junior players as well.
So the pathway then into refereeing, how did you fall into that one?
That's a great line because I literally fell into it. I slipped and broke my back when I was about 20, and my dad's friend, it's well documented for other podcasts and interviews I've done. My dad's friend, the guy Joe Kelly from Whistle, he was a top referee in the 60s, and he encouraged me. He says, "Go and take up the refereeing." I thought, no chance. I didn't like them and they didn't like me. But I was persuaded to go along. Thoroughly enjoyed the classes and learning. Mick Delaney was one of the coaches who famously or infamously sent off Graham Souness in his first game at Hibs. So Mick, that was obviously before then, but Mick was a very experienced guy, and another guy, John Deary. And they kind of take you under their wing, their wing when you're coming through the ranks, and they find you your first couple of games. And it was magic, it really was good. So I literally fell into refereeing.
How did you find, those opening stages? As you say, you worked your way right up to the top, but we spoke just a little bit off air. Sometimes the lower levels, they're actually the hardest.
You get your parents around the field. You start off generally with the boys' football. Now it's not boys' football now, it's kind of youth football and mixed football. But back in the day, it was mainly boys that were playing. It was only boys, and so mums and dads were there protecting their precious little treasures, and it was always the referee's fault if they get kicked. But in the main, it was fine because it was the younger kids, and you like to think because you were a player, you would actually try and help the younger kids play football. Tell them how to take a throw-in properly, tell them how to take a free kick properly, making sure that the guys knew that they had to be 10 yards back at free kicks and things like that. So it was actually a slight, and others will tell you that you're actually coaching a wee bit as well as refereeing.
Yeah.
So you're learning how to referee, but you're imparting what you want to do is be that footballer, be that coach. So it was fine. A few run-ins, as I say, with parents and sometimes with the fans at the side of the park. And then you move on to amateur games, and the better you get, the better amateur games you get, and they normally get bigger crowds. And back in the day, it was okay to drink standing round about pitches. I don't mean referees drinking round about pitches, but the fans. So you've gone to some rough areas, and it's all character building, and that's where I'm going with this. Ultimately, this leads you to this thick skin, or helps you develop the thick skin. Some fall by the wayside. Others decide that they just are happy to stay at a particular level, and I was lucky enough to be kind of identified and brought through to ultimately doing the kind of top games.
So building that thick skin, when did you realise, you think, wow, I could actually make a bit of a career out of this?
Again, very good question. But I was kind of fast-tracked as well for reasons I will bore the listeners in this one, but there was a new way of getting in. It used to be just basically go through the juniors and go through a well-worn path. I went through another league, and it was a better football league, supposedly. And it was, when you get onto the official SFA list, then that means that you're identified as being one of the top junior referees, but you can then also run the line at the senior games. You're thinking, wow, I'm part of the SFA official list here. Maybe I've got a chance. But you never think, and on to Sundays, that you'll be in charge of Old Firm games and international matches and the like. But that comes further down the line when you're doing well domestically. And that's the key, doing well domestically.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier you were relatively young for a referee to really get on at that path quite early. So you hear a lot of footballers and young ones in particular talk about their idols and whatnot. Now, you came through at a decent time actually for Scottish refereeing. Who were you looking around for support?
In terms of refereeing, I would look to the senior referees. There was a chap, most football fans of a certain vintage would know the name Tom Wharton, tiny because he was 6'16", and he was about 20 stone, but he refereed in his own style, and he was the kind of top man when I was coming through. He was the chairman of the referees. But with guys like Kenny Hope, who was probably the guy that I initially styled or modelled myself too strong, but I watched him, I liked him, he interacted with the players an awful lot verbally, a bit cheeky back to them. Which I was myself, as some of the players could testify. And then as I was getting on to what they call grade 2, when you're doing reserve football. Guys like Les Morton, Hugh Dallas, Don McVicker were all Lanarkshire referees, and I'm Lanarkshire guy, so I would go to the training on a Tuesday night, and these were the top referees. So these were the guys that you'd be sitting listening to and hearing, how they handled certain situations. So they would be my kind of my initial mentors and people that I looked up to.
Absolutely. And then what's the dynamic like amongst referees yourselves? Obviously there has to be a little bit of unity, but there has to be a little bit of competitiveness, a little bit of a rivalry.
No, superb. That's a great question, and it surprised a lot of people when I've been asked this and answered it in the way that you're absolutely right. That every referee, particular level, wants the cup final. Not everybody can get it, but yeah, equally, when we go to training in our own particular areas, or if you went training as we would do, like all the grade ones would get together, and there was great camaraderie because these guys would be each other's fourth officials. So they're trying to support your colleagues get through, because if somebody messes up during a game, it's a whole team that gets the blame of it. It's not just the referee or the linesman or assistant referees as they are nowadays. So there was great camaraderie because everybody knew we were doing such a difficult job, and the pressure was immense at times. But equally, I wanted to do better than my colleagues. Probably not want to see them make mistakes. I wanted to raise my game so that it was hard for the authorities to ignore me when it came to appointing the Old Firm referee or the Scottish Cup final or League Cup final referee.
Can you remember your first professional game as being the man in the middle?
I do. It was at East Stirling and Berwick Rangers, and I get abuse coming off the game from one of the directors, and the abuse never stopped. But I never expected it to stop. But it was a magic feeling, and again, hard for football fans to fully understand or really grasp the fact that somebody's happy being a referee. But it wasn't about being a referee; it was about football in Scotland, albeit it was East Stirling and Berwick Rangers at the time, so no disrespect to them, but if you're coming off an Old Firm game, naturally everybody would understand that, but just to be part of the senior football in Scotland, when, as I said earlier, I loved the game from early doors, so it was great, fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Fantastic. We spoke earlier obviously about your relationship with fans. What's your relationship like with players? It's so integral to have a rapport and a trust. And if you have a career as the length of years, obviously it helps. You become familiar with the players. Who were your go-to players?
It was probably players of your go-tos of a match. I would go on, as I said earlier, Kenny Hopes to a lot of players, and that's what I learned. And I like having banter anyway with people. Anybody who knows me will know that I'm quite cheeky, and I like the banter. So you would go on with the player who was causing you a problem, but if they weren't listening, you would just, one of the senior players, and I've gone as far as I can. I might need to actually get the book out or the yellow and red cards, and it's not really something that referees want to do. I know the fans will think differently to that, but it's much easier to get through a game with no yellow cards and no profile than being the guy that's throwing 8 or 9 cards and could become the of conversation later after the game.
So it's all about building those relationships, Stuart, but it's it happens at the weekend, but then you've got to go right back into a different field of work in the week. So you've got to partially block that from the weekend. So what's the part-time nature, of Scottish refereeing like? Because it's full pace, it's hectic, and it's quite consuming, but then you've got to go into your own workplace during the week.
Yeah, I think a lot of clamour for full time, and I think the referees, whilst they were better prepared, I still think they would make the same mistakes. So I quite enjoyed having two lives, if you like. My professional life, which was my work, and I had my, in inverted commas, part-time role, which was refereeing. But I have to say that refereeing takes over your life, so you might be seen as part-time. It's a full-time focus, and it always connected me when you had players and commentators, journalists saying that referees were part part-time, they were amateurs in the game, but nothing could be further from the truth in terms of the preparation and the focus that referees give.
When you're back in that, real full-time work, do you get a little bit stick sometimes from decisions you've made at the weekend?
No, big time. And there's a story, that I shared with one of my colleagues. He was a big, massive Celtic fan and best pals in the office, but refereed an Old Firm game on the Sunday. And I came in and I log into the detail, but he just didn't agree with that decision. And he actually went in the huff with me for a bit. And at first I thought it was because he's in kind of. And I went back into his room and I went, "Are you genuinely talking to me?" Well, I didn't think it was a yellow card for whatever it was. I said, "Well, even if it wasn't, the decision's made. Let's move on." But that was a wee bit of good fun in the office. But in the main, yeah, people are interested to hear why you might have given a particular decision or a card or whether it be yellow or red. And more often than not, when you explain it, they get it. But there are times when you say, I think I got it wrong. I watched it back in television and was it my best decision? To be honest as well.
Absolutely, but fundamentally, referees are human, and errors will be made under pressure.
Yeah, people would question that whether we're human. Even some referees, I question it as myself. Why would you be a ref? But no, we are. We live within the football population. We work within the football population. Somebody's got to do it. We go out and do it to the best of our ability. Sometimes we have really poor games, and we're never given the opportunity to admit that. Because we're played, if you like, the weekend press. The fans obviously don't think we have particularly good games most weekends, but there'll be times when the press is actually right. Yeah, we had a bad game, but it's not a crime to have a bad game because we've seen players, goalkeepers letting in goals. We've seen strikers miss open goals, big sitters, misplaced passes all over the pitch, and yeah, referees make mistakes as well. Who knew?
Who knew exactly? So how do you control your emotions, during a game? If you maybe think, oh, maybe didn't get that one right, or there's the player reaction or the crowd, the atmosphere for the stadium, that all can sort of contribute to the, oh, maybe that was the wrong call. How do you deal with that when it's it's extenuating circumstances? It's not maybe from your own mind, but like you say, it's a player reaction or the fans calling for you.
Yeah, a lot of the times it's noise. You don't listen to the noise. You've got to be true to yourself. And if you make one mistake, don't make two mistakes. So classic was, you hear the comment that that was a soft penalty he gave in the first half. That's why he gave that soft penalty or wrong penalty in the second half to balance it up. Why you would make two mistakes when you only need to make one mistake? Because you're not going to be forgiven for balancing it up. Yeah. You accept that. So referees don't do it yet. It's been levelled against referees over the years. What you've got to do is manage the players, and that's what the better referees do. They manage players. They're maybe not. I know the game as well as some of the other referees knew it when I was refereeing, but I think I managed to get on with the players, and they'll forgive you if they know you're honest. And you go back and say, "Sorry, was that no corner? I thought it was a corner. Right, no problem. Sorry about that." And players in the main will accept it. Obviously, if it's a goal that you're allowed to stand or given a penalty that should never have been, that's a wee bit challenge, but it's all part of the game.
It's all part and parcel of the game, but just really drawn on, the body language part, and then again, it comes, all sort of ties in with the relationship you have with players. In your final game, you just, the controversy just seemed to follow you, really, didn't it? And in that final game, and the Lafferty and Mulgrew incident, I'm sure many of us can remember. Is there a little bit of, maybe a hurt when you've been deceived by a player like that?
Totally. Actually, more hurt was my family. They were in the stadium for my final Premier League match, and they knew quicker than I knew that I had made a mistake and that I'd been conned. My wife in particular found that hard, that a football player would. He didn't set out to con me. There's no question about that. He set out to win or get something over an opponent, and I was in the judgment calling it completely wrong. I've since apologised to Charlie Mulgrew. No question about that. And but it happens. Players try to win penalties by diving or getting down in the box far too easily, and that's conning a fellow pro. And I used to have these discussions with Fraser Rusher at the PFA. I said, look, yeah, you're conning the referee, but actually, worse, you're actually conning a fellow professional. And if the fellow professional is deemed by the referee to have brought a player down in the box and he's, in inverted commas, last man, that player gets red carded. That player misses next week, and he might not get his team, his place in the team back again. And that's the thing about players diving and cheating and feigning injury. It's not just the referee, or more importantly, it's fellow pros. So I think it could be self-policed better, if you don't mind me saying. But ultimately we carry the can, and I get that wrong.
No, it's so important to, as you say, to really highlight. It's actually it's a great way you've put it there, because it is becoming more and more apparent. I know it's been there for probably the best part of 20 years now, but the feigning and the diving, it really has started to intensify, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and it's become accepted by the opposition. It's almost like I'm done there, and that's why there's not as much dissent towards referees for getting it wrong, because the players are doing it themselves. So when it's done to them, they kind of accept it as their turn. But I think fans are fed up of it. Seeing players barely touched and going down and rolling about 3 and 4 times. But it happens all over Europe. It happens both sides of the fence. It's not just one team that's guilty of it, or certain players. I'm not saying every player does it, but every team has 1 or 2 players that do it, and it's just now so entwined in the game that I think it's going to be very, very difficult to stop.
Absolutely, it's just like, as you say, it's so broadly accepted. But to be honest, I'm guilty of it, and I think so many of us are, that we're picking up on maybe the performances that you didn't do so well in. But so let's talk about the better ones. The Scottish Cup finals. Not only are the huge magnitudes of a game and the stature of the game, it's a great pride for you for getting to officiate that as well. But you done not too bad in the 2 finals that you were the man in the middle.
2 Scottish Cup finals and a League Cup final at home, and I was involved in European finals abroad as well, which I'm very proud of the fact. It's the ultimate honour when you're a referee to get given the Scottish Cup final in Scotland, and to get, as I say, some of the stuff in Europe. So, and again, for me, it was quite nice that one match involved Celtic, the other match involved Rangers. So to do our 2 big teams in the Cup was great. In an ideal world, that I've done an Old Firm Cup final, which has got to be the ultimate. But referees don't choose who's in the final. We just get to deal with whoever ends up the final. In the Celtic Dunfermline game in 2004, which was, I think, Henrik Larsson's last game. That game was very special in many levels for me. You can look back and that's a geez, a player such as Henrik Larsson in that game. Might actually remember that an alleged mistake was that Bobo Baldé actually armed the ball to him out of one penalty area, and Henrik picked up and ran the length, or half the length of the pitch, and scored a wonderful goal. So, Dunfermline fans that day weren't too happy with me, but I called it as I saw it, and I basically didn't see the Bobo Baldé handball. If that had been red card, I would still back then it was more than deliberate, but the rest to say is history. So, and you share that I mentioned my wife before. And the other cup final involving Celtic, obviously, wasn't a state of mind channel here. So was the Jimmy Johnson League Cup final, again against Dunfermline. They don't get to too many cup finals.
Yeah, exactly.
Sadly for them, they lost both. But my my music hero, Rod Stewart, was actually at that game, as he goes to a lot of Celtic games, and my wife and sister-in-law get chatting to him at half time, and for my hero to be watching me perform was fantastic. So again, I'm just a wee guy for wishy, as I keep saying, that in Lanarkshire, that to be in the centre stage of a cup final, and somebody like Rod Stewart's watching me perform. I'm sure he was shouting at me. I'm sure he wasn't agreeing with the decision, but that doesn't matter. So I can look back at them very fondly. Amy, yeah, fantastic.
Rightly so, and like you say, perhaps you never got the old cup, the Old Firm Cup final, as I should say. But what did you make of the Old Firm clashes themselves?
They were fantastic. The build up to them, I liken it to a bungee jump. You're nervous about it, but you still want to do it. And if it goes well, that the rope, holds out, that the game goes well for you. Ultimately, satisfying experience, not the night after a game. It takes a wee while to sink in, and obviously you want to make sure that there's nothing untoward in terms of the decisions that have been made, and that the feedback or the fallout, shall we say, from whether it be radio programs or newspapers over the weekend, if it was a game that was done at the weekend. But more importantly, the key thing was, were the SFA happy with your supervisor, who's ultimately the guy that's judging you? Was he happy with your performance? Because if you get a top mark and you continue to build your career, and if you didn't, then it's a fair chance to say you might not get the next Old Firm game. It's fair to say you probably wouldn't get the next Old Firm game. So yeah, they were great characters. Now I was very lucky as well. I refereed at the level at a time when we had fantastic players in Scotland. Gintham, but a lot of the Celtic fans will know who I'm talking about when it comes to Portuguese and Italian players, and some of the top English players, and over at Ibrox, the Dutch players and the German players, and a smattering of English and Scottish players. So the quality in the pitch was just incredible at times. However, they get caught up in it. It wasn't the silky soccer all the time. They were getting stuck in the way that we like to see our football, or maybe liked to see our football. It might have changed now, I don't know.
Who is the greatest player you've shared the pitch with?
I could be very versatile and say one of them. I genuinely believe that I think one of the best players that I shared the pitch with was Paul Gascoigne. Paul Gascoigne, undoubted ability. Yeah, he has done so many things that he's not held in the highest of respect by a lot of fans, but for outstanding ability, and played in Scotland. And then if we had Henry Larsson, Moravchik, just Celtic players that I could pick on. So having done domestically here, Laudrup, again, I think a lot of Celtic fans would acknowledge the player he was, Di Canio, McCoy. Can I say Chris Sutton? He'll tell me I should be saying that, but abroad, I'm lucky enough. I've done a lot of the young England players, Michael Owen, and the guys that came through at that level. But Zidane is probably the guy that gets the nod in terms of the top player that I refereed. I mean, you only refereed him for 14 minutes because
I was just going to say.
Because he had a wee fallout with another player and I had to send them off. And Rivaldo's another, you can see behind me, I'm a big Barcelona fan, mainly from the kind of 210, 211, 212, the way they play football. And Messi's, I never got a chance to referee Messi, but Rivaldo, a Brazilian there at Barcelona, was out in a game that which was particularly pleasing for me. But Zidane was just awesome. And people of a certain vintage will remember him, and I think they will agree with me. He's right up there.
Absolutely, and as you say, you shared the part with him for a matter of minutes, and then sent him off, and then sent off Edgar Davis later on as well. So talk us through that game.
Sorry, that broke up a wee bit, Amy. My apologies.
No, not a problem. So as you said, you shared the pitch with Zidane for a matter of minutes, and then sent him off, and then sent Edgar Davis off later on in the game as well. So talk us through that one.
Well, this could take a while, but I'll try and keep it short. It was my second Champions League game, and I'd been to, it was at the Alpi Stadium in Turin that Juventus were playing in. So I kind of thought, I've made it now, I've done my first Champions League game. And I use this as a business coaching as well, that I didn't do my homework. And if I had, I would have realised that in the first leg, the game finished 4 each, and Zidane had actually got sent off. But I hadn't done my homework, but I knew within 2 minutes that there was something, an undercurrent in the game, that players were really not working with each other, and particularly crabbit, as we would say in Scotland. And actually, Conte was the captain. Bruno Conte, who's just left Inter Milan, where he was the captain of Inter Milan. Sorry, Juventus that night. And it's just, they were arguing over just about everything. Zidane, I was going to be my best. I was going to be his best pal, you know, but it didn't work out that way. And he went an amazing run. And as he was getting up off the ground, he kind of, you know, made out that he actually put the head into a Hamburg player who was lying on the ground, and I caught it, fortunately, so I rushed across to give him the red card. But for me, very few had seen it, and hardly any had seen it, so it looked as if I picked Zidane just to send him off. And as he was going off, and Carlo Ancelotti was the manager, it's fair to say he wasn't too happy with me either. And the next thing, Davids is around me with a lot of other players, and I've got a wee video clip of this, and I basically said to him, if you're not away by the time I'm finishing, trying to write Zinedine Zidane, I couldn't really spell it, if I'm being honest, take my time to try and compose myself. And he basically told me I didn't have the, there was another word that he used, but courage to deal with him next. So I gave him a yellow card, and they put a challenge in 4 minutes later that I gave him another yellow card, and off he went. To which Conte came across me and says, "You're crazy." And I said, "I am, and you better tell the rest of your players that I'll continue if they don't behave." And that's what you at times is just interaction, and be strong. I'll be honest with you, inside my stomach was flipping, you know, the nerves, and you're like, what have I done? I've just ruined my career here. But fortunately, I mentioned earlier about supervisors being in the stand to, you know, support you. Hopefully, the guy from England who was UEFA, he thought I'd handled the game ever so well, and that was very helpful in my future European and international career. But
absolutely,
didn't sleep too well that night, if I'm being honest.
Don't blame you. But you ended up having quite the European career as well. You know, over 100 appointments, 30 odd countries. Talk us through some of the trips you went on. You know, before we get into the nitty gritty. It's amazing the amount of travelling you got to do.
Yeah, and we were always lucky that we travelled business class. So it's fair to say there were times where we felt rather privileged, you know, to be referees and representing Scotland, because you go SFA and SFA. But you know, it was nice to represent your country. And the same footballer gets a cap for every game. We can believe that we should have got a cap for every time we represented Scotland abroad doing games. And you know, length and breadth of, well, not quite the length, didn't quite get over to Asia or Australia, but certainly over to South America and extensively in Europe, and some great times, fantastic times, in fact.
Fantastic, and fundamentally that is what it's all about. I just want to highlight one final game that I did quite enjoy, you know, looking up, because I'll be honest, can't remember it at the time, but it's the Turkey-Hungary fixture you played a part on.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. That ended up being my last European match, international match. That where do we go from here? For those that aren't aware, that ended up sending off Zoltan Gera, who played down in England, obviously, and I'd been given guidance by my assistant that a situation which led to a penalty. I was actually going to give the penalty to Hungary in Turkey, which is a brave thing to do at the best of times, but that didn't faze me because I thought it was the right decision. My assistant closer to the deal and quite clear in shouting to me that it was a dive. Given his position in the pitch and given my position in the pitch, because it was a quick breakaway, so I wasn't as close to the incident as I would like to have been, I decided to work as a team and I went with his call. It turned out that it was Zoltan Gera's second yellow card. So not only did he didn't get a penalty, but he was sent off, and it was later proved that, you know, I would have been right to give the penalty, but I said earlier, we win as and we fall as a team, so I don't blame the assistant. You know, my judgment had taken his been known as the one that we're down on. But where I knew it was wrong, or when I knew it was wrong, was when the goalkeeper, the Turkish goalkeeper, gave me a just as Zoltan Gera was sent off and he was giving me the ball back, and I'm like, he's have done that to favour Turkey here. I just did, between me and the assistant, we got it wrong. And fair to say, I never got another international game. But that was the end of my international year. I had one game to do, which was Sportland against Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League in December. So that game was, I think, Parttime, October, November. So again, another part of my career finished poorly. So the Charlie Mulgrew situation, and we've now got the Hungarian situation. Any more for me, Amy?
Hey, just 2 out of such a long career, that's not too bad. I know you say you were part of the team, but is there a little bit of hurt, because you have your gut feeling, but obviously you trust your assistant at the time?
Yeah, of course, the hurt is that it's wrong. And, you look at it in television, and we reviewed it afterwards when we got back to Scotland, and he still thought it was right. And I thought it was clearly wrong. But refereeing's all about opinions. Ultimately, the opinion rests with the guy with the whistle. So I've got to be big enough and say that my call, ultimately, to say I'm taking the assistance, or I'm going, or my own judgment. And if I could do it all again, I would stick to my own judgment. But I stuck to my own judgment with the Kyle Lafferty and Charlie Mulgrew, and I was wrong in that. So there's no right way of doing it, wrong way of doing it. Work as a team, and hopefully between you get it right. But yeah,
absolutely.
To finish my international career, but it happened, and you just go on with it.
It's all swings and roundabouts, isn't it? And then, as you say, you hang up the whistle, but you don't really. You go in, and one of your roles since retiring has been you're part of the BT Sports setup. And the reason I'm bringing this in is because, do you think you would have benefited yourself from VAR during your time as a referee?
No, I've not done VAR. And sorry, it broke up a wee bit, so if I don't pick up your question exactly, I'm sorry. But VAR's a hot topic, and it has been for a couple of years. And I did warn people that be careful what you wish for, because I do think in principle it's a great idea. Be implemented properly, it's still a great idea, but to be ruling out goals for offside because of somebody's toe or whatever it might be, again, anybody that likes football thinks that's the right thing. But I do think for obvious, clear errors, I do think there's still a place for, or definitely a place for VAR. And if it'd been there at Charlie Mulgrew, Kyle Lafferty incident, justice would have prevailed.
Absolutely. Well, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us. I've thoroughly enjoyed the chat, no matter how difficult it may have seemed to have been, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you so much for joining me on Soccer Supernova.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me along. I've enjoyed it.